You are about to witness the very exciting story that will open new sights in familiar surroundings.
The atomic age was born.
It is a story of a city seeking new horizons in a resolute contest with great challenges.
Welcome to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're going to be talking about GMO-free Midwest, or actually building a GMO-free Midwest. With me I have a couple of guests who have worked on these issues for years. I have Daniel Romano with Safe Food Action St. Louis. I got that right?
That's right.
Okay, and I have Barbara Chicherio with the Gateway Green Alliance. Okay, great to have people here. Now, Barbara, what is happening on September 16th and September 17th, 2012?
Well, we're very excited because September 17th is actually a global day of action. It's called Occupy Monsanto, and it's to celebrate the first year anniversary of Occupy Wall Street. So all across the globe and all across the United States, there are going to be actions and events voicing our concerns about Monsanto. And Monsanto is very aggressively taking control of our food, and it's continuing to aggressively promote and build genetically modified organisms.
Okay, if people are interested in getting involved in this action on September 16th, they can come to an event on, I believe it's September the 9th, the Great Green Pesto Feast.
Oh, okay.
And where's that at?
Well, the Great Green Pesto Feast is going to be at Black Bear Bakery, and I don't know the address, Don.
Digger, do you remember the address?
It's 2639 Cherokee Street.
2639 Cherokee.
Between Texas and Iowa.
Okay, and that will be at 6 p.m. Sunday, September the 9th, and so everybody who's interested in this event should come to Black Bear to help talk about it. Now, let me ask you, there have been some things that have happened before in St. Louis. One of them is World Food Day, in I think it was October 2011. And there was all of us were there at the demonstration at Monsanto World headquarters. One of the signs that people carried, or a series of signs, said, "Stop Monsanto's genetic contamination of our food." You know, we've been talking about GMOs for about 2 minutes now, but whatever, without telling the viewers what GMOs are. What is a GMO?
Well, a GMO is a plant that is created through the process of gene splicing. So that's where DNA from one plant or a virus or a bacteria or an animal is spliced into another plant. And it's a process that cannot occur naturally through traditional methods of hybridization. It occurs in a laboratory, so it's nothing that can occur naturally in nature. And most of the plants at this point that are genetically modified are done specifically so that they're resistant to herbicides and pesticides.
One of the things that people are worried about is lack of labeling of GMO food. Now, is labeling occurring in the United States and in Europe? Diggers?
The European Union has mandatory labeling, so you will know when you go to a supermarket whether these potentially harmful substances are in the food. Okay. But in the United States, there's no labeling, and Monsanto has done everything it can to oppose labeling.
Okay. Now, one other sign that people were holding is, why is Monsanto pushing food that rats won't eat? Now, what was the research that was done? It was about people. Did they offer food to different animals, and what happened when animals were?
Well, you have to realize that the FDA relied on testing.
That's the Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration that Monsanto had done on their own food. So you can, that is not neutral, and is not to be trusted at all. However, there have been many scientific experiments that have shown that these are harmful, and probably most prominent is the one that Arpad Pushtai. He worked at the Rowett Institute in Scotland, and he was a very respected scientist there. And he actually did experiments with rats with potatoes, genetically modified potatoes. Now, he was a supporter of GMOs, and he expected to find that they were safe. But lo and behold, the rats had lots of physical problems. They tested them on young rats, and he found that
so basically there's people who supported GMOs but then turned around and ended up being very critical of them.
Exactly.
Now, I don't want to rush you on too much, but there's a bunch of topics that we need to cover. One is another sign that people carried said, why is Monsanto suing farmers? Now, what is that about? Just very briefly in about a minute.
Right. This is about patenting. And unlike farming before, Monsanto, when they sell you the seeds are patented, so they have a license over them. And if the farmer saves his seed, like if he grows soybeans one year and then saves seeds for the next year, which is how farmers have always done it, well, he can't do that unless he buys them from Monsanto. He's unable to save his own seeds.
And so that's where the lawsuits come in. Now, another topic, Barbara, which I think is really important, is that people have been picketing in St. Louis. And there was a demonstration, I believe it was in March of 2012, at the Missouri Botanical Gardens. Now, why would people be picketing the botanical gardens in the city of St. Louis?
Well, first of all, that was a demonstration that was put together by Occupy St. Louis, and they were targeting major corporations that had headquarters here in the city, like Peabody Coal. Monsanto's world headquarters is here in St. Louis, so that's why Monsanto was picked as one of the corporations that they wanted to address. They went to the botanical gardens because many people aren't aware that Monsanto heavily funds through grants the botanical gardens, which is a big concern for many of us, because there's a lot of research that's done at the botanical gardens having to do with, world food issues, and by Monsanto giving them money, there's concern that there's bias there, again, in the research.
And it has certainly muted criticism by scientific bodies, and that's what it's all about, buying influence. It's what Monsanto is all about.
And so do we see that sort of same influence pushing in St. Louis besides the botanical gardens? Do you think that Monsanto has very much influence over the politics of food in the city of St. Louis?
Absolutely. They fund so many schools and stuff. They want to maintain this untarnished issues from the local level to the national level, where they have their own Monsanto employees at the FDA. They've influenced policy on food, as I say, locally, nationally, and internationally.
Okay. Barbara, could you tell us a little bit more, review again, what's coming up on September the 16th and 17th?
Okay, so
because this is really important for the viewers to keep in mind.
The 16th is a Sunday, and that's primarily going to be a conference day. And we have a lot of different topics we're going to address throughout that day. And let me just kind of go through them.
We'll just have time for one topic, then we'll take a break and come back to the others, okay?
Well, let me pick one. We're going to do one on the health effects of GMO foods, because that's a question we often get. How is that going to, if I eat these foods that contain plants that are genetically modified, how is that going to affect myself, my family, and my friends? So
and would it be fair to say we know for certain that if you have a pet rat, you should not give GMOs to your pet rat, but it might not be safe for your kids too? Okay, thinking of that, we're going to take a break, and we will take a look at this message, and we will be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we are talking about building a GMO-free Midwest. And if you remember what I mentioned before the last part, I have a couple of great guests with me. I have Barbara Chicherio with the Gateway Green Alliance and Daniel Romano with Safe Food Action St. Louis. Now, Barbara, you were just starting to tell us about some of the things that are going to be happening on September the 16th and 17th.
Okay. Well, I can go through the schedule for the 16th, but I want to also say the 17th is going to be very lively, because that's actually Occupy Monsanto Day. And we're going to be having a panel in the morning, and then we will have 2 actions later in the day.
Great. And what's that panel in the morning going to be?
It's going to be on economics.
And the way that GMOs are being used to dominate the economy
Right.
of the world. And what are some of the great people who are going to be on that panel?
Well, I think Don Fitz might
Oh, I'm going to be on that one. Oh, that'll be a great panel. I want everybody show up on the 17th. You get to hear me talk for 20, 30 minutes. Okay.
So on the 16th, backing up to Sunday, we're going to have some breakout sessions and some panels, but there's going to be a session on bee colony collapse, and Suzanne Renard is going to be.
What's about bee colony collapse?
Well, there's a lot of problems with the death of bee colonies, and there's been a lot of, and this has been a problem all across the United States and in other countries too. And so there's been a lot of controversy about why this is happening, and the importance of having bees as pollinators. If we lose bees, it's a huge problem for our food. So
that's what Suzanne's going to talk about.
Suzanne Renard, who's local. The thing that I really like about this conference is we have a lot of local people involved, and we're also bringing people from other parts of the country and other parts of the world. So Suzanne's going to explore bee colony collapse and the role that herbicides and pesticides play in that. We're going to be talking some about labeling, because that's one of the big topics, labeling GMOs. Digger is going to be talking about Roundup and how it's become, and weed resistance.
And you'll get to say a little bit more about Roundup later in this show.
Well, I have lots to say
okay.
about Roundup.
And then we have GMOs as a weapon of global domination. We have Carmelo Ruiz, who's going to be coming from Puerto Rico, and we have Pretty Cox, who's from India, and some other speakers that are going to be talking kind of about what's going on globally with food. And
okay, so we'll be covering how GMOs is used to control farming in Africa, Asia, and Latin America,
Right.
and how they're all parts of the world are being subjugated to Monsanto and the other big multinational agricultural businesses.
Right. Then, like I said before, health effects of GMOs, concerns about industrial agriculture, and we have Stan Cox, who's with the Land Institute, that's going to be.
Oh yeah, that's in Salina, Kansas,
Yes.
and he works with Wes Jackson, who's the best-known person
Right.
at the Land Institute.
Right, and they really are they're working to develop edible plants that are sustainable, that are perennials, basically. And then Eric Herm, I haven't met him before, but he's been very active with OCA, Organic Consumers, and he's a farmer from Texas.
Okay.
And then we're going to be talking about dangers that GMO pose to communities at risk.
So, and basically a lot of that danger is that if you have people who are, their immune systems are compromised, and you eat a lot of GMO food, then that can make your immune system even more compromised, and that's
And
they're going to cover that in detail.
Yeah, and GMOs are, and you see a lot of GMO plants in highly processed foods, which lower income, a lot of the lower income neighborhoods don't have access to fresh fruit and vegetables. And then the economics panel.
Okay. And so that's going to be basically the content. Tell us again when that's going to be.
That's going to be September 16th and 17th.
The Sunday and Monday. And then what's happening on 1 week before, September the 9th?
September the 9th.
The Pesto Feast.
A lot
of things are going on. Okay, so be sure, if you want to find out more about the conference, come to the Pesto Feast and you get to talk to a lot of people. Be there. Okay, we're going to take a break and look at some footage that was taken by Robin Bell with Organic Consumers Association when they came to St. Louis. Was that March of 2012? In March of 2012. So let's take a look at this footage.
Let's walk.
We're rising up against Monsanto. That's right, Monsanto, the chemical company that brought you Agent Orange and Roundup Ready.
grocery aisle. It's like a minefield. You're not sure when you're going to step on something that's going to give you cancer. All because some corporation wants to save a penny per pound.
Self as a seed company, we will not tolerate these injustices any longer. We demand that our food is labeled. It's time to take action against genetically modified food. I don't know about you, but I don't want cancer. Come on, St. Louis, it's time to occupy Monsanto. You deserve healthy food. But let's be real, not everybody can afford to buy organic. That's why we need a label on our food today, GMO or not. Do you really want a chemical company growing your seeds? They're not even growing them. They're making them in a scientific laboratory. They're right here, headquartered in St. Louis. You, the people of St. Louis, should take back the power and occupy Monsanto. Join us on September 17th as we occupy Monsanto. Check us out online at occupy-monsanto.com. Monsanto's a chemical company. They brought you Agent Orange and 2,4-D. They also brought you Roundup Ready.
Hey, look at me. Wave.
Welcome back to Green Time. I'm host Don Fitz. This episode we're talking about building a GMO-free Midwest. And with me I have Daniel Romano with Safe Food Action St. Louis and Barbara Chicherio with the Gateway Green Alliance. Now, folks, in the segment that Robin Bell made of people by the arch in downtown St. Louis, viewers saw folks in hazmat suits, hazardous materials. Explain a little bit about the reason for that.
Well, the reason is because the plants that have been with the GMOs in them pollinate. They put out pollen, the soy and the corn, and that gets everywhere. As a matter of fact, it drifts into other farmers' fields and contaminates their crops. And so this is carrying the GMOs. So you wouldn't want to breathe it in. One of the things that Barbara talked about, some of the dangers of GMOs, but another is allergens. There's unknown allergens in the GMOs.
Right,
so you don't want to breathe.
And we don't know what the pollen is, and so if you have an immune-compromised system and if you have allergies, and those tend to go together, well then who knows what the effects are breathing the pollen. Is there a lot of research looking at that?
There's lots of research, and there's also been outbreaks. People might remember several years ago the Starlink thing, and that's where this was a GMO in corn, Starlink corn, that was not approved for public consumption, yet it got into the corn supply, people were eating it, and they developed allergic reactions to it. So we've already seen dangers from these.
Okay. Now, what are some of the dangers of using a lot of pesticides? Now we're told that if you have GMO crops, they don't use as many pesticides, and so you don't have as much to worry about. Now, is it true that you don't use as many pesticides?
And that's exactly one of the claims that, the BT is this substance that's used, by organic farmers. It was for
BT,
many years.
Bacillus thuringiensis?
That's right.
Okay.
As a way of dealing with pests. And they would use it very sparingly. But they took the genes from BT and put it into, for example, the corn crops. You have BT corn. So now every gene of the BT corn, this genetically modified corn, has the BT in it. It's a pesticide. And yet no studies have been done, not by the FDA, to see if this has any impact on human health and stuff. And yet this pesticide, you're eating a lot of it when you eat corn.
Now, I saw something on the news in early 2012 that said, be sure to wash your apples really good because apples have a lot of pesticides on their surface. Now, if you have corn with Bt in it, can you wash the Bt?
You can't wash it off. It's in the genes, in every gene in that plant.
Okay.
And this is, again, one of the dangers. And we talked about push tie before. There have been studies that have found problems, animal studies with various genetically modified plants. And push tie was the one that had looked at potatoes. And when the rats he saw had underdeveloped livers and internal organs, damaged from eating these genetically modified potatoes, and it turned him around from being scientists in favor of GMOs to against them, but yet immediately they suppressed his findings. They tried to denounce them. This is a very respected scientist. They took his findings away from him, his studies, and wouldn't let him have access to them until the British Parliament looked into it. And and then it raised some real red flags.
You're bringing up a lot of issues which people are not very familiar with. Another issue of GMOs, which I think is extremely important to keep in mind, is how they could have a very negative effect on people with compromised immune systems, and they're being pushed very heavily in southern Africa. And all throughout southern Africa, there's a huge epidemic of AIDS, which basically is a compromised immune system. So this could be something which could conceivably hurt the health of Africa even more than in the United States.
Exactly, everywhere. And like in the U.S. now, more than 90% of the crops, corn and soy crops, have used GMOs. So this is really widespread, and people need to pay attention.
And people don't know because it's not labeled.
Right, and are there? I know those of us in St. Louis have been pushing for labels. Are there people in other places that are pushing for labeling GMO products?
All over the United States.
It's been introduced in, I think, 15 or 17 state legislatures, and in California this November will vote
in
on
November
whether
2012.
November of 2012.
It's a ballot initiative, so that's very important.
Okay, and so people have basically what you're saying. There's a lot of people organizing all around the country
and the world.
And did you say earlier that people have been successful in been successful in England as far as in the European Common Market?
In the European Union, there is mandatory labeling. They've done a lot more testing over there. There's a lot more concern about the environmental and health effects and economic effects of GMOs.
Okay, and so there are these struggles going on all over, and it's clear that people can win because they have won in Europe, and there's efforts going on. 2012 is a very big year for the United States to be concerned with this.
Yeah. I think Digger wanted to talk about weed resistance.
Weed resistance. Oh, yes.
Yes.
We got about a minute left.
A lot of the crops that are genetically modified are modified to resist Roundup. This is glyphosate, Monsanto's premier product. And the idea is that you can spray the Roundup on the crop, but it won't kill the weed. Well, years ago when it
won't kill the plant.
Won't kill. I'd say it kills the weeds, but not the targeted plant.
Right.
The soy. Well, years ago we talked about the weeds would develop resistance. Of course they would. And now we see that it has in fact come true. And now the farmers are having lots of problems with weeds. They're having to use much more toxic herbicides on their plants.
So GMOs have resulted in the increased use of pesticides and more pesticides.
And more toxic herbicides and pesticides.
So now they're using Roundup and their old line pesticides.
Okay. So and all of this was forecast before.
Yeah,
so environmentalists were saying this. Health experts
right
were
from
saying,
the beginning.
Okay, Barbara, we only have about 30 seconds left. Tell us a little bit about what is happening on September 16th.
September 16th and September 17th is Occupy Monsanto. The 16th is a conference day. The 17th is primarily a day of action. And we hope everybody can come out for it. I think that there's a URL on the screen.
Okay, I want to thank y'all for participating. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in. Be sure to tune in this time next week for Green Time.